Okay, Ed, we are ready if you'd like to begin at your discretion.
Welcome to Reston Association's 2022 Board of Directors Candidate Forum. I am Ed Abbott, Chair of the Reston Association's Election Committee. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. For this election, the membership will vote on 3 Reston Association board members. 1 at-large director for a 3-year term, 1 Lake Ann Tall Oaks director for a 3-year term, and 1 North Point District Director for a 3-year term. This year, elections will open on Tuesday, March 1st and run through Friday, April 1st. Members may cast votes online or by mail. Please remember that even though these seats are uncontested, a quorum of 10% of the membership is required for each seat on the board for election results to be valid. As a non-stock Virginia corporation, RE requires a board of directors. RE members elect the board. In turn, the board is responsible to the members for setting policy, evaluating the CEO, approving the budget, and approving the budget. These duties and other responsibilities, among others, are included in the RA's governing documents. This evening, we'll have an opportunity to learn about each candidate's position on various issues within our community. To ask the candidates a question, you may raise your hand using the hand raise button located in the participant tab in Zoom, or type your question into the chat feature. Also, the EC has received questions prior to this evening, which we will pose to the candidates. We have a limited time for this evening's forum. As a result, we will pose as many questions as time will allow. We will alternate between those that were submitted prior to this evening and those that are posed by tonight's attendees raising their hands on a first come, first served basis, and those that might be submitted by the Zoom chat feature. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to make an opening remark. Once each candidate has made their opening remark, we will begin the question and answer portion of the evening.
So candidates are ordered with their respective districts in alphabetical order. So first at large, then Lake Ann Tall Oaks, and then third North Point. Candidates will be called on so that turns are taken with who goes first for each response. We're going to begin with opening remarks, and we will start with at-large candidate Glenn Small. So you have 5 minutes, Glenn.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity. I am running for the at-large 3-year term, and I'm running basically as a 14-year resident of Reston, wanting to help serve the community. I come here as a management consultant in my professional life, and I'm still active in that profession, and looking to listen first and then look for solutions, looking to include the most perspectives as we make decisions. My perspective is Reston Association and the board appear to be very well run. I've attended some meetings recently or sampled them at least online, and it's a hard job. It's a lot of detail to be aware of, a lot of preparation. I admire and appreciate the service that people perform, and I'm hoping to live up to that. I will be open and transparent in my approach. That's pretty much what I would like to say as an opening remark, and some of that time can be reused for questions. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Next, we have Erwin.
Greetings, RA members who are watching this evening, as well as those who may be watching later on YouTube. Greetings to my fellow candidates and to the members of the Elections Committee and the RA staff, whom I thank for setting up this forum. Tonight, I will cover some of the issues that the board will have to deal with, and many are interrelated. First, I want to address board transparency. In my opinion, the board needs to share with the membership issues when they occur and its approaches to deal with them. It's the members' money. Timeliness is an essential element of transparency. Presently, the board is involved in selecting a new CEO. It has met twice for this purpose in the last 7 days, but all of the search is taking place in secret. Moreover, it appears that the present board is rushing to complete the appointment on the eve of this election. The public knows nothing about who is being considered to run an $18 million membership organization with 63,000 inhabitants, nor what their experience or capabilities may be. This hiring decision should not be conducted in secret and should be left to the incoming board. The present board action is not an example of transparency. Next, I turn to environmental sustainability. The RA needs to integrate into its planning and actions concerns about the environment, climate change, sustainability, and resiliency. The goal here is the development of well-reasoned, scientifically based, financially sound approaches across the board. It also means the preservation and enhancement of our open space, characteristic of Reston, and an essential element for human health and wildlife. To be clear, Reston's 2 golf courses are open space and so designated in the master plan. They must remain so now and in the future. RA also needs to plan how it will lower its contribution to atmospheric CO2 and increase its absorption of it. Fiscal responsibility through long-range planning and spending controls are important elements of board responsibility. They have become even more important as we need to repair, renew, and rehabilitate our aging infrastructure at a significant cost. Careful stewardship of the money received from assessments is required. The question arises, can RA increase its cash inflow other than by simply increasing the annual assessments on members? And my answer is yes. One way would be to have more of the apartments already constructed and to be built in the TSA join RA and thus contribute to the costs of the maintenance and repair of the amenities they will enjoy. Another way is by obtaining financial commitments from developers to provide funding through Proffers to RA for the maintenance and improvement of existing facilities. Both of these can happen with the support of our supervisor, whose cooperation we must enlist. Communication with members needs to be two-way, frequent, and focused on understanding what may need to be corrected to serve members better. This is very important. Member feedback now occurs through member comments for 3 minutes without any board reaction, and once a year through board members attending listening sessions in the 4 districts. There are also emails. Is this enough? I don't think so. There needs to be a mechanism where members can talk with board members more frequently, less formally, and without the 3-minute time limit. Finally, we need to look to the future of RA. We're all busy, but my generation is not going to be deeply involved for many more years. We need to actively look for members of younger generations who recognize the important role they can play in RA for the benefit of all. The younger generations have more skills, more energy, and we need to encourage them to assume more responsibilities to make RA work for their own future and show them how it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Laurie Dodd.
Hello, I'm Laurie Tyler Dodd. I am pleased to be running as in this uncontested race for a volunteer position, but on the Reston Association board. You know, I had run in 2019 for county supervisor because that is our most local level of actual government. Many people in Reston Association look at us almost as if we are a local government, though we are in fact a large homeowners association and have just the authorities that are given to a homeowners association. So I just wanted to introduce myself again. During my 26 years in Reston, I have raised 2 children here who've attended public schools. I've been involved with so many Reston activities, whether it's on the board of Reston Community Center, the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, Reston Swim Team, Reston Children's Center Board, my church board. I have testified at numerous meetings of Reston Association and at the Board of Supervisors, the school board. And so I have been an engaged citizen the whole time I've been here. I've also been active in Reston Runners and Coalition for a Planned Reston, Rescue Reston, and I still enjoy, particularly during the pandemic, the Reston Association Community Gardens. So I know that Reston offers so much to the community, and my family has loved every bit of living in Reston. And so I wanted to step up and volunteer to be on the Reston Association board. I am very pleased with the fellow candidates who are running with me. I've spoken with Glenn and Erwin, and I think we share more than we don't share. And so I wanted to welcome all of us, I hope, provided that we get enough Reston Association members out to cast 10% of the votes so that we have the quorum needed to have our results verified. My priorities as a Reston Association director would be, first of all, environmental sustainability. Those of you who followed my campaign for supervisor know that I put a high priority on open space, which in Reston includes the 2 golf courses. I also believe in renovating our facilities efficiently. I believe that Reston Association has to work to protect the environment that makes our community life so rich. And so we have to, I'm pleased to see that we're going to have an environmental officer that's going to help us see that all actions and decisions by Reston Association include environmental sustainability as among its goals. I also believe in fiscal responsibility. You know, we have too much good in Reston to blow it by not managing money well. We don't need ballooning assessments, but we do need substantial updating to our aging infrastructure. So finding a way to do that with fiscal responsibility is a priority. And finally, member engagement is my third priority. And that really does translate to the kind of transparency we just heard Erwin talk about. Let Reston Association decisions, proceedings be as public as possible and expand beyond the comment period so that we do, as board members, hear from residents between meetings. And I also hope we will have public meetings to invite more comment. We will reach out to homeowners associations and other community groups within Reston. So I would like to encourage everyone to vote so that we can have a strong board of directors for Reston Association.
Thank you. Now we have a question posed by Ed Abbott, our elections committee chair.
Yeah, the candidates will be given 1.5 minutes to answer this question from the elections committee. You are all unopposed in this election. It is very likely you will become board members. Do you feel that there have been any board decisions that were not made in the best interests of the membership? And if so, once elected to the board, how will you approach those issues?
So for this, we're going to start with Lake Ann Tall Oaks candidate Erwin Flashman.
I think there have been several decisions which I have over the past several years opposed as they were taken. I can think of several. One of them is, for instance, the idea that the CEO should have authority to spend $100,000 without having to recur to permission from the board in case of an emergency. I argued during the time that this was being considered that this was unnecessary, that the money would be better spent on planning on how you could meet those emergencies and having the plans ready to enact at a time when that was appropriate, and that merely throwing money at an emergency without having a plan was money that was going to be ill spent. I also thought that the amount of time that is required to call the board into action in order to approve the matter or the spending was short. It only requires 2 days notice. And that in the meantime, the CEO could gather information that would be necessary to help the board make the decision about what was to be spent for what purpose and how it was to be spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Laurie.
I would say, first of all, I am eager to look forward for Reston. So I am not looking back to question past decisions made by Reston Association. And there were some that I did not agree with. But you've heard my priorities of environmental sustainability and fiscal responsibility and member engagement. And those values are going to get to guide all of my future decision making. I would have questions about whether expending money on a purchase like the Tetra property, was that a wise decision or not? That's a past decision. We don't need to revisit that. In the more recent future, I'm concerned particularly about the need for transparency. So as we have had Reston Association difficulties with the information technology aspect of our operations, those difficulties, that situation should have been transparent to members. It should not have been hushed up. I will never favor keeping members in the dark about what's going on within Reston Association and within the Reston community. So I really want to look forward towards transparency and as much member engagement in making those decisions. And member engagement means that we do have to provide information with enough lead time so that members are well informed and they can come to meetings and comment. They can reach out to board members through other means. And if we are not putting out enough information, then we will not have transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Glenn.
Yeah, thank you. I tend to agree with Laurie. I don't look back at past decisions, and I'm not aware of a whole lot. There's one decision I'm thinking of that I personally didn't understand, didn't agree with. But I think really the board should be looking to include more and more perspectives, and to the point of transparency, as others have noted here. So we get to a decision that seems to be okay, but we have a lot of impacts or a lot of people who are speaking up. We need to make sure we can slow down and include more perspectives before we finalize decisions. The more perspectives that we include in decision making, the better. So I would think we have an opportunity to do better on our big decision making, like I would say key decisions, not the minor decisions, but the decisions that impact a lot of people. So if it hits a certain dollar threshold or impacts all residents or all members, we should be able to like hit the pause button and say, wait a minute, do we have everybody's perspectives here? Not just the people that are aware of the issue or were activated to come and speak at the meeting. That would be my perspective, is like, let's do better in making our decisions so that they're including all perspectives and they're no more solid for the future.
Thank you.
Evening, I'm Mike Leone. I'm Reston Association's Director of Communication, Marketing, and Member Services. And tonight I'll be posing the questions previously submitted from RA members. All the questions have been electronically randomized, so they'll be asked in no particular order. For members in attendance this evening, you'll also have an opportunity to participate. And I know one member has already indicated that they'd like to participate. If you'd like to ask a question to the candidates this evening, please use the raise hand button located in the participant tab in Zoom. Once you've raised your hand and have been recognized, you'll be unmuted and you can pose your questions to the candidates. You'll also have the option, if you prefer not to ask the question out loud, you'll also have the option of typing the question in the chat feature located here in Zoom. Please keep in mind that if a question has already been posed, we'll move on to the next question. If you're planning to ask a question on camera or in the chat box, we ask that you just please follow these basic rules. Questions obviously should be relevant to the candidates. Members posing the questions live should keep their question to about 10 seconds so that we can please keep brief and move through as many questions as possible. Questions should be formed in as a question as opposed to a statement, and must be open-ended so the candidates have an opportunity to actually respond to your question. And finally, no questions constituting a personal attack on any of the candidates will be permitted this evening. Okay, let's get started. So before I ask a question that was previously submitted by a member, I believe Tammy Petrine has our first question. So Tammy, go ahead and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question.
Yes, I would just like to say how thrilled I am that these three candidates have volunteered to serve for RA. I appreciate all of their diverse expertise, and I certainly hope, as Erwin said, that this new board constitutes the election for our new CEO as we go forward. Thank you so much. You are so appreciated. Thank you.
Tammy, do you have a question?
How thrilled are you to be serving on RA?
So first we have Laurie.
I'm first. Yeah, very thrilled. You know, it's something I have thought about off and on over the years, and now seems to be the time for me to step up. And I'm pleased to have a board that's got other engaged members who are committed to doing well and keeping Reston the marvelous, dynamic, diverse place that we all love. So I'm thrilled.
Next is Glenn.
Wouldn't say thrilled. I'm honored. And I know it's a daunting task ahead. I don't minimize it. There's a lot of long meetings, a lot of detail I have to prepare for. So, but I'm proud to be able to have the opportunity. So.
And next, Erwin.
I think I share the emotions that are felt by Laurie and Glenn. I have over the years helped a number of people to run for, and some of them to be elected, and to be members of the board. This for me then is, while something I'm not unfamiliar with in terms of the preparation for it, it will be a new experience for me as a candidate and if elected as a board member. I will have a little more than 3 minutes instead of the 3 minutes I have as an observer. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with the first previously submitted question from a member. Do you have suggestions on how to engage a younger demographic, perhaps Reston's next generation, and promote more involvement in RA's committees and the governing bodies?
So for this, we're going to start with Glenn.
I love this question. I do not have a specific recommendation, but I do have an idea that's worked in my consulting practice over the years. Let's ask them. Let's go find some younger members and let's really ask and listen to what they say. Why are you not involved? What would it take to get you involved? And use that. In my profession, we call that insight-driven change. And so that's the approach that I would take. I don't know why younger demographics are not more involved. I'm also wondering if that's a true premise. Maybe they are more involved than we know. But my basic answer is let's ask them and listen to what they say.
Thank you. Next, we have Laurie.
I agree with Glenn that we need to ask young people how to get more engagement. One thing that I am very pleased that Reston Association has handled well through this pandemic is that meetings have been held by Zoom, and so that people can engage without exposing themselves to disease. But I'm hoping that even when that need is diminished, that we will continue allowing that kind of remote engagement, because I think one of the things that keeps younger people who may be young parents or they may have demands on their time that are different from other age groups, and is that it's difficult to always show up in person for a meeting, and having an opportunity to submit video input or engage by way of Zoom or other remote methods makes sense to me. And I am open to any other suggestions to continue to get more young people engaged in Reston Association. And I think that we also have to, as board members, reach out to members to get their input whenever we can and to encourage them to get more engaged in the association.
Thank you. Now, Erwin.
I agree with the comments of Glenn and Laurie, and I would add that we presently have two younger people, at least compared to us, who are on the board and attending this meeting this evening. That's Jennifer Jushik and Sarah Silverage. They're at least younger than I am. I think that there is a way that you can do this, and that is there are a number of different groups in Reston, including things like Reston Runners and several other groups which attract younger people. There are people who are going to various gymnasiums and that kind of thing. And we could attract or attempt to have conversations with them and set up group meetings in which we ask them what their opinions are, talk to them about what Reston Association is and what impacts it can have on their lives now and in the future, and that the future, since the future is theirs, becoming part of Reston Association and taking hold of some of the decision-making processes would be important for them to learn and to undertake. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like there are a couple of questions in chat. The first is, says, would you consider during budget hearings to think about selling the lake house, turning ball fields to park authority and pool management to RCC? So we'll go with that. And first we have, first we have Erwin.
Can you repeat the last part of that question? I missed it.
Sure, I'll read the whole thing. It says, would you consider during budget hearings to think about selling the lake house, turning ball fields to the park authority and pool management, turning that over to the RCC?
School management?
Pool.
Cool.
Well, pool management over to the RCC. I think to the latter two questions, my answer would be no. These are essential services provided by Reston Association. They are owned by Reston Association, and they should be maintained and operated by Reston Association. With regard to the lake house, that is a decision that requires some further examination in terms of what does Reston Association gain by having it? What does it lose? What can it do with it that it is not doing now that would be a better result? And then based on the information that is developed to those kinds of questions, it might be something that could be considered. It was obviously purchased at a price that was well above its value. It has not proven to produce the kind of income that was projected at the time that the sale was being pushed by the board at the time. And so that's something to be perhaps looked at.
Thank you. Next we have Glenn.
Yeah, so for the lake house, I've read and heard about this idea that the lake house was sold and then reacquired by Reston Association, and the perspective that it was overpriced when it was reacquired. And I think from my perspective, looking at the budgetary cycle, looking at what's working, what's not working, to Erwin's point, is the lake house generating the revenue that was expected? And if it sounds like it's not, and if it's not, why not? Can we look at that before we decide to sell it? Is there anything we can do to get the revenue that was, I guess, projected? And then I'm not familiar with the details, but before we would sell it, I would want to look at how it's being operated. Is there anything we can do to maximize or optimize the revenue that we thought we were going to get? On the other items, those sound like things that are well within Reston Association purview and should probably stay, but I would apply the same principle. Is if it's something that we could, it's something we should be doing, great. And if it's maximized, we're optimizing it, great. I saw in the budget, there's a line item for storing recreational vehicles. And that drew my attention, like, why are we in the business of storing recreational vehicles? And is that a net cost benefit for the Reston Association? That's a side topic, but I think all these things should be open to discussion and evaluation. And I wouldn't say any of them are off the table, but I think we need to be mindful and respectful of all of them.
That's okay. Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Laurie.
So I agree with much of what has already been said. I do think that the pools and the ball fields are some of the properties that provide amenities to our members that mean most to our members. And it is right for our Reston Association to continue to manage those things as we have done. We have to manage them well. We have to repair what needs repairing. We have to avoid closing facilities that are still widely used and valued by members. And so I have concerns about some topics that were raised in the past about closing pools. But I don't think shifting responsibility to RCC or the Park Authority is the way to go with any of that. As for the lake house, again, the purchase price was above its value at the time. That does not mean that we could sell it for a high price. And so the budgetary decision has to consider all of the factors that are involved, look critically at whether it's gaining the revenue and meeting other community purposes to the extent that it should. And so it is something I would definitely be willing to look at again carefully to see what we get and what our responsibilities are when we own that property.
Laurie, we have another question in the chat box. What is your perspective of transportation impacting Reston now and in the future? I'm going to repeat the question. What's your perspective of transportation issues impacting Reston now and in the future?
First, we'll start with Laurie.
So I wish I knew more about which specific transportation issues were being considered. Reston Association has its place in among other governmental agencies. And so our role in transportation is not as substantial as the county or the VDOT or other parties. But at the same time, I think that Reston Association has to make sure that we do use the power that we have. So for example, even if we didn't make decisions about golf courses, Reston Association was right to speak up and to say, this is an amenity that Reston members, including RA members, value, and it needs to be respected and maintained. So it's walking a line between the kind of advocacy for Reston residents, including RA members, that RA really should take on, but combine that with the fact that our decision-making authority in the field of transportation is very limited. Now, as I've said with sustainability, one of my main concerns, I do want to encourage all those bodies to consider environmental issues, and transportation is an area where environmental considerations have to be paramount. So encourage the consideration of those important factors, but recognize that our decision-making powers are limited.
Thank you. Next is Erwin.
I agree with what Laurie has said. I can see that in the future, as population of Reston may grow, particularly in the TSA, we are going to confront greater amounts of traffic congestion, particularly during those hours when there is a lot of traffic to and from people, to and from work for people, and to and from schools. The most that we are going to be able to do is to ask the authorities that they consider, when these projects are being considered that will include growth, that they take into account the impacts on infrastructure, and particularly transportation, in the design of the roads and in the consideration of the densities that will be posed in those areas. So there are ultimately limits to growth, and particularly in areas of transportation, I do not foresee that we're going to have double leveled roads or tunnels extensively throughout Reston. So we're going to have to deal with some realities, and increased mass transportation may be the answer, as well as bicycles and other less intensive methods of transportation. Walking is also a good way.
That's actually time. Next is Glenn.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Laurie and Erwin on this. And it sounds like the board's, it does sound like it's outside the board's purview and authority, and something that we can try to influence, but not really have direct impact on. And I just would double down on what Erwin and Laurie said, and I have nothing else to add to that one.
So it looks like there's another question in the chat. I'm going to read this. It says, in terms of the golf course open space, do you think these open spaces should be preserved as golf courses or some other open space designation? And Glenn, we'll start with you on this. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I'm reading it in the chat as well, so I understand. So I came to golf late in life, and I've spent some of my happiest moments and most frustrating moments on golf courses, including Reston National. And so I think, but I haven't played golf in years. I think golf is great. It's a wonderful, very frustrating athletic activity. These have been around for many decades. They do seem to be part and parcel with Reston. I think that the authority, again, back to the previous question, the authority of the Reston board is somewhat limited in what can be done, or these golf courses are not owned by RA. We don't control them. And so I think my personal perspective is I think we should try to do whatever we can to encourage that they stay open space, whether that's golf course or some other open space. I can't imagine what other open space would be there instead of a golf course, but I'm happy to understand what that could be. They do provide, there's something about those golf courses, even if you don't play golf, when you drive through and you see the open space and you see people on a sunny day enjoying a round of golf, it adds something to the culture and the atmosphere of Reston that would be terrible to lose if those golf courses became housing developments and which has happened many other places. It would be sad to see. So I don't know what we can do as a board to influence that, other than to say, I know there's a resolution that was passed. Okay, I'll stop then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Erwin.
The golf courses presently have a statement concerning them in the master plan, which says they are to be maintained, essentially says they're to be maintained as open space. There was, as most people in Reston know, an attempt by one of the developers who purchased one of the courses in court to get by that, and he failed, and in good measure because of the opposition presented by Reston's attorney, that is Reston Association's attorney. And I believe that the same provisions will be maintained in the new revision of the Reston Master Plan. And the supervisor, Alcorn, has said that unless there is a clear statement by members who surround the golf course that they are willing to accept the change, that he is not going to do anything with respect to changing the master plan. And to now, as far as I am aware, the people who surround, the people who surround the golf courses have clearly expressed themselves that they do not want any change. And so it would appear that for both golf courses, this is the case, and they should be maintained as golf courses. Thank you.
Next is Laurie.
So my highest priority is to maintain the open space that has been in the Reston Comprehensive Plan and hopefully will always remain in that plan. I almost laugh when we say that they are just golf courses, because of course they are privately owned and operated golf courses. I don't play golf, and yet the golf courses to me are places to run, places to walk, places to watch birds, and the environmental benefits of having that open space, even when it is managed as a golf course, is so valuable to the community that I would not want that to change. I would oppose any direction towards development. I agree that the residents who live around there, around the golf courses, do strongly favor keeping it as golf courses now, not opening it up to development. So I'm pleased that Supervisor Alcorn has stated that he will look to those people, and without a clear expression from residents who live near the golf course that they would accept a change, there should be no change. Again, Reston Association powers are limited, but let's use the power we have, because keeping open space in Reston is a strong value of the community, I believe.
Thank you.
So we have another question in the chat for our candidates. In terms of the golf course open space, do you think these open spaces should be preserved as golf courses or some other open space designation?
So I think we just read that one. But there is a question in chat from Lynn Mulston. It says, what role do you think RA should serve in ensuring that agreed upon proffers are actually delivered to the Reston community? Promised. And we will start with Erwin.
I didn't quite understand the first part of the question. Could you repeat it, please?
Sure. It says, what role do you think RA should serve in ensuring that agreed upon proffers are actually delivered to the Reston community as promised?
It can certainly follow up with what has happened as it moves along. The proffers are publicly made, but they are usually made in concert with the approval by the county of the various permits that are sought. So it is really the county's primary obligation to determine that these proffers have been followed through. The last proffer that Reston Association itself received was one from the Boulevard condominium, which was used in the purchase of, or the upgrading of the lake house. And that was the last one I am aware of that Reston Association directly received. So if there are other proffers, the Reston Association can examine what they are, but the primary responsibility, I believe, falls on the county to assure that the offers that were made and accepted by the county with respect to those are complied with.
Thank you. Next, we have Laurie.
Like Erwin, I do believe that enforcement powers over the proffers are probably held at the county level. However, we all know that in Reston, there has been development, there will continue to be development, and we have to make sure that those developers make the commitment to the community by way of proffers. That's the mechanism where that happens. And one of my concerns has been that developers who develop in Reston, when they are required to provide recreational space, it's not always provided within Reston, or it's not always managed. Even if it's in Reston, it's not managed by Reston, by the Reston Association. And instead, it goes to the Fairfax County Park Authority, which has county-wide responsibilities. And those of us who are here in Reston, when it is our locale that's being so directly affected by development, we deserve to have some of the amenities come to us in Reston. So we don't just bear the burden for the density, for the increased population that we have, but we also get the advantages from it. So while we may not have legal authority to make sure that happens, it is an issue that I think we need to raise and make sure that the county and our county supervisor and others within the county who have the power are aware that Reston residents want to see benefits in Reston when proffers are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Glenn.
Yeah, if you could repeat the original question, because I
Sure. It says, what role do you think RA should serve in ensuring that agreed upon proffers are actually delivered to the Reston community as promised?
Okay, thank you. So I think to the extent that the association has participated or has some kind of authority in those proffers, we should either as a board or as the general counsel follow up and make sure that things are being followed through. Clearly, Erwin and Laurie know a lot more about this topic than I do. But if the general concept is builders offer proffers in order to get approval to do things, they should follow through with those things, and we should try to hold them to account.
Christina,
Done.
or Mike, may I avail myself of the opportunity to add a comment?
Sure, we can give everybody 1 minute.
Okay.
Yep.
What I would like to add is that I think Reston Association has to be more aggressive in obtaining the proffers for Reston Association. And it must work with the supervisor in order to have that happen. It is important, as Laurie pointed out, that those developments that are going to impact Reston's resources should provide proffers to assist Reston in meeting the needs of those new residents. And so it's a better arrangement to have the money passed to Reston Association than to some other agency.
Thank you. Laurie, would you like to respond also?
I believe I addressed it in my allotted time. I do think that Reston development, when there are proffers that are made, then those proffers should go to benefit Reston. Of course, equity demands that we also don't neglect the rest of the county. And so I'm not saying we completely shut out the rest of the county, but Reston Association, Reston area has, in my view, gotten the short end of the stick in terms of the way those proffers have been implemented in the past.
Thank you. Glenn, would you like to respond?
No.
Next question is going to be from Galaxy Tab A7. I'm sorry, but I don't know what your name is. If you are planning to ask the same question that you asked in the chat, please address the question to all of the candidates and not one candidate specifically. Galaxy Tab, would you like to ask your?
So my question is that candidate Dodd and candidate Flashman have explained their credentials to run for the board, and perhaps they could reiterate them and why, and then perhaps candidate Small could explain why he is running.
First, we're going to start with Laurie.
So I see that the question as originally typed into the chat box was asking why committees at RA have not been the direction of my volunteer services. I have volunteered in this community. I've been engaged in the community in so many ways. And Reston Association, as vital as it is not the only game in town. And being on the board at Reston Swim Team Association and at my church and Reston Community Center are all valuable ways of serving the community. And so I have also been involved in Reston Association as a consumer, perhaps you might say, because my kids were on the swim team. My daughter worked as a lifeguard for Reston Association. I am a member of the Reston Association Community Gardens. I've been a Bluebird House monitor for Reston Association. I've supported Walker Nature Center. So there are many ways to support Reston Association and the Reston community besides serving only on Reston Association committees.
Thank you. Next, we have Glenn.
Yeah, I think that question was probably directed at me because Erwin and Laurie have spent a lot of time volunteering and serving. I have not. I've been focused on my business and my family. However, I've done volunteer activities over the years. I've served as a religious ed teacher at our church. I've served on the board to do fundraising at my daughter's school. What really motivated me to serve is in the recent months, I've had some encounters with the DRB and the Reston Association. And actually in January, Ed appeared at a DRB meeting that I was on and said there was a candidate informational event, no one showed up. And so I thought, well, I'll throw my hat in to see if I can serve. I think I have some value to add. And I don't have any previous experience on the RA board. I think the benefit of me is I bring a fresh perspective. And I don't have any, axes to grind or any specific agendas. I'm here to be open and honest and helpful.
Thank you. Next is Erwin.
I moved here with my wife in 2009. And I lived prior to that time in Puerto Rico and kept going back for a period of about a year and a half or 2 years, because I am a lawyer and some friends of mine had asked me to assist them in some cases. And so that meant going back and staying for a few weeks and then coming back here. And that eventually cases end. And so I started looking at Reston and what I could do. And a friend of ours suggested that I might be interested in the Environmental Advisory Committee. And so I went to the committee and sat in a couple of meetings and then applied to become a member. And I ended up being a member of the committee for 9 years until I timed out. And for 6 of those years, I was the vice chair of the committee. And during that time, we developed a lot of new approaches. And the board itself commended the Environmental Advisory Committee as a model for other committees to follow. Since I have also become involved in following the board's activities, attending the BOC, that is the Board Operations Committee meetings, and the Board Governance Committee meetings, and once in a while, some of the other committee meetings that are open. But I've been an active participant in all of those committees, insofar as 3 minutes allows me to be active.
Thank you.
Okay, ready for the next question?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Another question from the chat box. In the last 2 years, what are the positive things you've observed as an RA member and you'd like to see continue and move forward? Let me repeat that. In the last 2 years, what are the positive things you've observed as an RA member that you'd like to continue to see move forward?
We'll start with Glenn.
As a relative outsider, I see that RA functions very well. I'm so appreciative of all the work that is done by the board and by the staff. So the maintenance that takes place, all the upgrades that take place, I think that's all, part and parcel of what we do. I don't have anything other than we need to just continue doing what we've been doing. So I don't have anything super specific about on that question.
Thank you. Next is Laurie.
Well, like Glenn, I think, Reston Association is a dynamic, well-run organization. And I'm not here to pick any nits about anything that's gone on in the past. I've seen a lot of good in the last 2 years in the history of Reston Association. And so that's why I'm eager to get involved. I'm not here to second guess or to try to undo anything that's been done in the past. I'm interested in facing the future challenges for Reston Association. And there are many, so let's focus on those and let's make sure that we're meeting the needs of the members as we address those things.
Thank you. Now, Erwin.
I'd like to point to one thing that I saw most recently last year, and that was the approach to the question of what is to be done with the Shadowwood Pool. That approach was essentially suggested by the by Sarah Silverage and followed through by the board. And what it consisted of was to go to the area and the people who would be served by that pool to find out, one, what was going on at the pool, what they see the pool's function as being, whether they would attend if certain things were done, and the reasons why they were not going, or some of them were not going. And there was a lot of investigation done. I participated in it actually a bit because I was called by the president of the board on the Saturday when they were hoping to have people come to express themselves, and they wanted a translator capable of translating into Spanish. And so they called me and I went and participated in that way. But it resulted in a clear expression by the members of the community that would use the pool that they wanted the pool and the problems that existed with the pool so that they could be addressed in the bringing the pool back online. And I believe that the Parks and Recreation Committee is now looking at those issues and how to approach that. And I think that the process that was used was a very valuable process that should be repeated for other issues.
Thank you. That's time.
We've got one more question from the chat window. This is a fairly long one, so I'll repeat it once I've read it through. We've got huge increased expenses facing the Reston community in the years ahead, with aging pools and other infrastructure in need of reconstruction and repair, and projections of a population growing by 40 to 50,000, requiring millions of dollars in new amenities. Where are the funds to pay these many millions going to come from? I'll repeat it one more time. We've got huge increased expenses facing the Reston community in the years ahead, with aging pools and other infrastructure in need of reconstruction and repair. Projections for population growth of 40 to 50,000 require millions of dollars in new amenities. What are the funds, where are the funds to pay for these many millions going to come from?
I'll start with Erwin.
I'm sorry, my dog was calling me. The Reston Association maintains a fund for restoring and maintaining its infrastructure, and that is partially where the funds will come from. Every 5 years, there is a study done to determine how up to date the fund is in terms of the expected needs over the next period of time, a 10-year period. And so that is where a portion of that money will come from. The growth that is being projected is growth that is not just for the area that is under the control of the Reston Association, but for Reston wide. And so therefore, there are some areas where the funds will have to be coming from other than Reston Association. Unless those areas that have apartments and decide to join the Reston Association and thereby contribute in the same way that we all do towards increasing the funds to bear the responsibility for the development of additional recreational facilities and for the maintenance and repair and rehabilitation of the present facilities.
Thank you. Next is Glenn.
That's an outstanding question. It's a hard question. It's one reason that I wanted to serve, because when I was talking and thinking about it, we know that Reston's been around for a while. We have a lot of aging infrastructure, and we have a lot of things we want to do. And I think, and I've looked at the budget, and I've looked at the budget input process from last year. I think it's really going back to those principles we talked about at the beginning: transparency and openness, and really coming to some sort of consensus. What do we can't afford everything. We have to come together as a membership and say, what can we commit to, and what hard choices do we have to make? I think there's a lot of opportunity to maybe increase revenue for some of the things that we're getting revenue today. Maybe that will help. Some of Erwin's ideas in increasing revenue may help in that area you mentioned earlier. And to the point of the population increase in this area that's not controlled by Reston Association, Those are larger issues that we don't have control over. So I think the question is, I don't know where the money's coming from, but I think we can tackle it together and we can figure it out.
Thank you. Next is Laurie.
I agree that this is the fundamental question facing the Reston Association from this point. You know, when we were founded, when Reston opened up, when Reston began and was formed, a lot of these amenities were provided by developers early on. And so they were given to us without us having to build the pools from scratch. And yet we're getting to the time when a lot of our facilities, including those pools, are reaching close to the end of their useful life. And so there is a lot of maintenance, repair, and possibly even replacement that is going to be required. And so I'm so glad that we have Glenn and Erwin and lots of smart people already on the board who are ready to volunteer and help make those decisions. I agree with Erwin that we need to look at getting more units into the Reston Association, because those folks who live in the TSA, they may not be required right now to be Reston Association members, but they certainly benefit from all the amenities that RA provides to the area. And so I do hope that more can be encouraged to become Reston Association members, and we can look at new units that are created should they be Reston Association members. I also agree with Erwin that developer contributions have to be maintained. They have to be overseen so that we see that we are getting the benefit of those developer contributions and that the community amenities are being upgraded in accordance with the developers' ability to profit off of their activities in the area. So it's a difficult fundamental question, and I hope that folks who were out there listening to these questions being answered by us will also stay engaged, get on committees, talk to your board members, and help us find the right ways to handle these challenges as we go forward.
Thank you. That's time.
We have one more pre-submitted question that I'm going to read, but I'm going to also put out a last call. If anybody wants to ask a question, just a reminder, please raise your hand or type it in the chat box. So the final question that I have, one of Reston Association's core values is stewardship, including that of its financial resources. How best can Reston Association ensure the RA's annual budget remains aligned with the needs of the membership? Again, one of Reston Association's core values is stewardship, including that of its financial resources. How best can Reston Association assure the RA's annual budget remains aligned with the needs of the membership?
We'll start with Laurie.
These financial questions are fundamental to what the decisions that the Reston Association Board is going to have to make in the future. And stewardship is one of the fundamental roles that the board plays. And so keeping the budget aligned with the needs of the members is the highest priority. Now, I think that if you look at where the Reston Association budget goes, there's a large amount that goes into salaries, and I agree that staff needs to be compensated at a good, reasonable level. But we need to look at, is our staffing, does it need to be realigned sometimes to the priorities that the Reston Association members have? We need to guard against becoming an older organization that does things the way that they've always been done. And maybe it's time to look at juggling some of the staff responsibilities and reallocating responsibility so that needs of the members are more fully met. But this is something that I don't have specific ideas right now, but I'm eager to learn more and to keep stewardship in mind. And fiscal responsibility is vital. We're all paying our assessments. We need those monies to be used well.
Thank you. Next is Erwin.
One of the ways in which that can be accomplished is using zero-based budgeting, in which each area of the budget needs to have a hard look at it as we progress in time. That doesn't mean that every time we do a budget, we do that kind of close analysis, but every so often, it pays to take a hard look at the budget and what we're spending and what we are getting in return for it, so that the needs of the membership are met in a sound way. The other way to look at it also is to take a look at what we do with the money that we put aside for other kinds of things, not to be used immediately, but are put into funds for capital refurbishment and that kind of thing. It may be that there is a safe and slightly higher return that would be available at upon a careful investigation and consideration. Those are two things that could be done to meet the needs. The other, of course, is to understand well what the needs of the community are. Because we may be missing the boat on some of the needs, and that needs to be looked at as well every so often.
Thank you. Next is Glenn.
Another good question. I think the two-part answer. One is looking at ways we can increase revenue, looking at all the areas where we're getting revenue, and can we do things to make that enhance those revenues. Not saying that there's a whole lot of money there, but maybe there is. The other thing is being very transparent with our membership. And I know there's listening sessions for the budget. As a 14-year Reston resident who pays kind of attention, I didn't see when those things happened. I think getting more people engaged to say, here's our choices. We have some hard choices to make, and getting more and more people involved in getting their input will help us make the smart decisions about how to prioritize. We have to prioritize. We can't do everything. And that's my perspective on this, is like we have a pretty hard budget. This is related to the previous question. Where's this money coming from to do all this infrastructure work and all the other things we want to do? And it really comes down to let's really understand what our members really want. They want to do more and have more amenities and pay more in their fee, perhaps, or do they want to do, keep the fee the same and then deal with that level of budget? What can we do with that if we keep the fee the same? So that would be my my perspective. And I know we've done outreach, but I think we can do better. We always can do better in terms of including people.
Thank you. That's time.
We received one more chat question. If there were unlimited funds in a dream project or big ticket wish list item for RA to build or accomplish, what would it be and why? If there were an unlimited funds in a dream project, a big ticket wish list item for RA to build or accomplish, what would it be and why?
And we'll start with Glenn.
That's a really fun question. There isn't unlimited funds and there isn't unlimited budget. So I don't think I can answer that actually. So I'm gonna celebrate the person who submitted the question, but I'm not gonna provide an answer to that one.
Next is Erwin.
Even assuming that unlimited funds and a dream project were available, it's not for me to say. It really is for the association members to make that decision. And since we don't have unlimited funds, it's still the members' decision in terms of we need to explore what they want, because the association is there to serve the members' needs.
Thank you. And Laurie?
I don't think Reston Association is at a time when a new big ticket project is what we need. And so I think that we need to work hard on maintaining the quality we have had, which is going to include upgrading a lot of aging facilities. If there were a big ticket project out there, it would suggest that there had been a gap in what Reston Association has been doing. I think that they've been covering the bases of what they need to do fairly well. And I think that Reston Association members are not eager to pay the kind of increase in assessment that would be required to take on a new big ticket item. So I think we have to keep sound fiscal management and continue doing well the things that members need. And I guess that's my answer.
Laurie, we have a question from Mr. Lovas. John, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. The Reston Association Board has been presumably searching for a new CEO, the top job in RA, since last July, I believe, or around 7 or 8 months. And it's been moving at a fairly glacial pace. Now I understand they've hit the panic button, and they've suddenly decided they need to reach this decision, though they've not reached it yet, as I understand. They need to reach this decision before the results of the election are known and before you guys are seated. I guess my question is this: at this point, after this, it sounds like the U.S. Senate a little bit. That troubles me. But do you think that, the three of you, do you think that is appropriate, that they rush this decision and that at least 3 of them will not have to bear the consequences of the decision, but you all will? What is the appropriate action? Would it be better to hold off for just a couple more weeks and let you all have a role in it? What's your view on that?
We'll start with Erwin here.
I earlier expressed myself with regard to that question when I announced my candidacy the day before the filing for candidacies was required at the board meeting. And I indicated that I thought it was appropriate for the board to delay the selection and allow the new members who might be elected to participate in that decision, especially in view of 2 things. One, they were going to have to live, those who were elected newly, were going to have to live with that decision for the next 3 years. And 2, the CEO, whoever that may be, will have a great impact on the rest of the association. There are several leadership positions, senior leadership positions, that are currently open. There is the IT person who will be in charge of IT matters. There is the human resources person. There will be a new environmental person at the senior leadership level. There will be a new chief financial officer. And I have heard rumors that Larry Butler might be thinking of retiring. I have no idea whether it's true, but if he were to retire, there would be a need for a new chief operating officer as well. That's
actually
impact on the.
Sorry, thank you. That's time. Next is Laurie.
It is an important time for Reston Association, not only the CEO, but as Erwin has described, there are quite a few openings in senior leadership that are open now or likely to become open in the near future. I do thank the Reston Association board member, Sarah Selvaraj, who presented a resolution or asking that those 3 of us who are running as uncontested candidates for the seats that are about to begin could be added to the committee as non-voting members so that we could be involved in the conversations for the CEO who we're going to be working with during our 3-year terms. And I certainly supported Sarah in that direction. And I don't understand why that resolution did not pass. I think that those of us who are going to be the leadership of Reston Association in the future at the board level need to have strong relationships with the new CEO and other new senior leadership members. So I would have favored getting us involved as non-voting members before our seats began, but that was not to be. And so we will move forward from here and make the decisions as well as possible.
Thank you. Next is Glenn.
Yeah, so my perspective is that it would be nice to be included. I never expected to be included because I'm not a board member yet. I also would say that I would defer and trust to the current board to select a good CEO, and I'd be willing to work with whoever they select. So I would trust their judgment in who they select, and we will work with that person, whoever that is, assuming they're qualified and everything. So I'm less concerned about this than others. I do appreciate John's bringing it up because ideally, yes, we would have some input, but on the other hand, it's been going on for a while, the search, obviously, and so if they're moving forward, I'm assuming they're doing their job correctly, and they'll get a good candidate, and we'll work with whoever that is.
Thank you all. We're nearing the end of our forum now, and on behalf of the RA Elections Committee, I want to thank all of you who participated tonight for your insightful questions. And of course, I want to thank all of you, the candidates, Glenn Small, Erwin Flashman, Laurie Dodd, for your thoughtful answers. If anyone has additional questions after tonight and you'd like to ask them of the candidates, you're free to do so by email their candidates, and their email addresses are located on the Reston Association website, www.reston.org. You can go to our elections page, and contact information for each of the candidates is there. You'll also be able to find that information when you receive your ballot guide in the mail or by email on March 1st. So those two locations where you can access the email addresses to contact the candidates either through the website or the ballot guide that you'll be receiving next week. At this time, we're going to offer each of the candidates an opportunity to do a 3-minute closing remarks.
And we will start with Laurie.
I think you see from the three of us who are running for the board right now that our commitment to transparency and member engagement is evident from the start, because we were offered the chance to pass by this candidate forum. There's no candidate that's running against us. And so we could have done that. But we wanted to reach out to the Reston Association membership. And I was glad to see that it was not only my sentiment, but also shared by Erwin and Glenn, that we need to get out there and be seen and heard, so that people who are in Reston Association know us and can reach out to us. So, I know that this video will be viewed by a small proportion of the Reston Association membership. And I thank all of you who did view us live. But I think that this is an example of what we're here to do. I think that in the recent history of Reston Association, the engagement around Shadowwood Pool was a great success. And it was an instance where members were consulted and their needs were understood better than they had been before, and were addressed by the decisions that were made. And I think that is a model for what I would like to see Reston Association do with future decisions. We do need to increase our transparency and engagement. We need to focus again on environmental sustainability, whether that is in terms of protecting the open space and making good use of it for the members to use, but also in the running of all of our operations. Reston Association has a lot of vehicles out there. What kind of environmental consideration should go into that? I'm glad to see that there's going to be an environmental officer to help make sure that those considerations are always kept in mind as we manage all of our properties in the future. And of course, fiscal responsibility. None of us want to see our assessments balloon without any reason. And so we have to spend the money that comes our way well, and we have to let members be involved so that they know where the money's going. They know what decisions we're making for where the future funds will go, and they are as involved as possible. So that also I would like to see Reston Association amenities into the future paid for by those who are going to use them. And that's a principle I believe in and would like to put into action on the Reston Association board for the North Point District of Reston.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, let me also add, I know that you know where to find our email addresses. You can also reach me. Let me tell you, mine is Laurie 4, the number 4, Reston @gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Glenn.
Thank you. So just in closing, I'm very honored and excited for the possibility of serving on the board and working with Erwin, Laurie, and others to make Reston better. I'm not coming to this with a lot of direct experience on the RA board, but a lot of experience in project management and management consulting that I think can help, with what we're doing. So I feel like the board has a lot of opportunity to do better, and I'm here to help with that. We're uncontested, but we're not solidified. So any vote that you can provide would be great. So that's kind of my closing statement. So thank you.
Thank you. And now Erwin.
Tonight, you, the members, have had an opportunity to hear from us as candidates. We hope that this forum has been helpful to you. Of course, we continue to campaign and be available, and I look forward to receiving your comments and thoughts. And you can write to me at Erwin, the number 4, Reston @gmail.com. Reston works well when members participate as volunteers, as observers, as participants in the decision-making process. But most importantly, at this juncture, it works because members care about RA and want it to succeed. We all have busy lives, as I noted earlier, but voting takes just a few minutes. Speaking up is also an essential part of the effectiveness of RA. Democracy requires action and involvement. So I ask you all to vote for the 3 of us. We are good candidates who have a demonstrated ability to do the work. We have done it elsewhere and will continue to do so for Reston Association if elected. Remember, you can reach me at erwin4reston@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for your time, your kind attention, and hopefully your vote.
Thank you all. And I want to thank everyone for your engagement and your participation this evening. Just a little plug and a reminder on how the balloting works. Ballots for the election will arrive at your home either by mail or by email next Tuesday, March 1st, based on the communications preference that you previously reported to Reston Association. So if you opted to receive your ballot electronically, you'll receive it by email. Otherwise, you'll receive it by U.S. Postal Service. I also want to remind all of our members, whether you're a property owner or a renter, you have the ability to vote in this election. Also, as a reminder, all ballots are due back no later than Friday, April the 1st at 5 p.m. So essentially, you have 4 weeks in which to place your vote. Members, again, can vote either by mail or online, whichever is more convenient for you. Replacement ballots, should you need one, can be obtained by calling 610-935-6170 or by sending an email to restonelection@intelliscaninc.com. And again, that information will also be available on our website should you need it. On a final comment before we close, even though, and you've heard this evening, these races are uncontested, please take the time to vote. All races must receive the 10% quorum requirement, so every vote is still important. Again, thank you all for your time this evening. Have a great rest of your evening. Good night, Reston.
Mike, I'd like to add one thing.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to thank the staff for pulling this together. It's no
Yes.
easy task. I want to thank Sean, Mike and Christina for their hard work and all this. So I think they deserve a round of applause.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, and don't
Night.
forget to vote.